I thought I had everything figured out. I really did. Until one tiny detail destroyed my entire life, my marriage, my family, and left me standing in the ruins of what I thought was a perfect decision. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Or at least, I used to live there with my husband, Michael, and our 2 beautiful children. Emma, who's 9, and little Jake, who just turned 6. We had what everyone calls the American dream. A nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the garage, family vacations every summer, and a marriage that looked solid from the outside. Michael worked as an architect at a prestigious firm downtown, and I was a high school English teacher. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We were happy. Or so I thought. Everything started to unravel about 8 months ago. Michael had been working late, more and more frequently. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was working on a major project, a new cultural center that was supposed to put his firm on the map. He'd come home exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open during dinner, sometimes falling asleep on the couch with his laptop still open. I felt sorry for him, honestly. I'd rub his shoulders, bring him coffee, tell him how proud I was of his dedication. I was the supportive wife, the understanding partner. I was playing my role perfectly. But then small things started to change. He became more distant, not just tired, but emotionally absent. When I'd try to talk to him about my day, about the kids, about anything really, he'd give me these vacant stares, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Our conversations became shorter, more superficial. And our intimate life? It practically disappeared. Weeks would go by without so much as a kiss that meant anything. I told myself it was the stress, the project, the pressure. I convinced myself that once this big deadline passed, we'd get back to normal. And if you're relating to this story, if you've ever felt that distance growing in your own relationship, please subscribe to this channel. I share these experiences because I know I'm not alone, and neither are you. One night in March, Michael came home earlier than usual. It was only 7 in the evening, and I was helping Emma with her math homework while Jake played with his toy trucks in the living room. Michael walked in, and something about his face made my stomach drop. He looked pale, drawn, like he'd seen something terrible. I asked him what was wrong, and he just shook his head, said he needed to talk to me, alone. We went to our bedroom and closed the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I prepared myself for the worst. I thought he was going to tell me he was sick, that he'd been diagnosed with something terminal and hadn't wanted to worry me. Or maybe that he'd lost his job. I ran through 100 scenarios in my mind during those few seconds of silence before he spoke. What he actually said was somehow both better and worse than anything I'd imagined. He told me he'd been offered an incredible opportunity. A once-in-a-lifetime career move. A position at a renowned architectural firm in Dubai. Yes, Dubai, as in the United Arab Emirates, as in halfway across the world. The salary was almost triple what he was making. The benefits were extraordinary. It would set us up financially for life, ensure the kids could go to any college they wanted, allow us to retire comfortably. It was, by every practical measure, an amazing offer. But it meant uprooting our entire lives. Leaving Portland, leaving our families, our friends, the kids' schools, everything we knew. Moving to a completely different culture, a different continent. And it needed to happen fast. They wanted him to start in 2 months. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I couldn't speak for what felt like forever. Michael filled the silence, talking rapidly about how this was our chance, how we'd be set for life, how the kids would get an incredible international education, how it would be an adventure. His eyes were bright with excitement now. All that exhaustion and distance suddenly explained. This is what had been consuming him. This opportunity, this decision he'd apparently already been contemplating without really including me in the process. I asked him when he'd known about this offer. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I found my answer. 2 weeks. He'd known for 2 weeks and was only telling me now because he needed an answer soon. 2 weeks of carrying this massive, life-altering decision around while I'd been completely in the dark, worrying about why he seemed so distant, blaming myself for not being interesting enough or attractive enough to hold his attention. That first night, I said no. Absolutely not. How could I possibly uproot our children, take them away from their grandparents, their friends, their entire support system? Emma was finally thriving at school after struggling with reading for years. Jake was in a wonderful preschool program. My parents, who were getting older, lived just 20 minutes away. Michael's mom, who'd been widowed 3 years ago, depended on our weekly Sunday dinners. How could we abandon all of that? But Michael was persistent. He started showing me research about international schools in Dubai, expat communities, the safety ratings, the modern infrastructure. He showed me the salary figure again and again, breaking down what it would mean for our future. He reminded me that I'd always wanted to travel more, to experience different cultures, to write that novel I'd been talking about for years. In Dubai, with the salary he'd be making, I wouldn't have to work. I could finally pursue my writing dreams. And please, if you're following along with this story, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter, and your support helps me keep sharing them with others who need to hear they're not alone. The arguments went on for days. We'd put the kids to bed and then stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning, going in circles. I'd list all my reasons for staying, and he'd counter each one. When I ran out of logical arguments, I fell back on emotion. This was our home. These were our roots. You can't put a price on belonging somewhere. But he'd counter that with his own emotions. This was his dream career move. This was him being able to provide for his family in ways he'd never imagined. Didn't I want him to reach his full potential? I started to feel like the villain, like I was the one holding him back, crushing his dreams, being selfish. Friends and family had mixed reactions when we cautiously started mentioning the possibility. Some thought it was an incredible opportunity. Others thought we were crazy to consider it. My best friend Rachel was firmly in the stay camp. She reminded me that money isn't everything, that stability and community matter, especially for children. But my brother, who'd done a stint working in Singapore, encouraged me to take the leap. He said it was the best thing he'd ever done for his personal growth. The pressure was immense, and slowly, gradually, I started to crack. I started to imagine this new life. A beautiful apartment in a modern building, weekends on pristine beaches, travel opportunities throughout the Middle East and Asia, the kids becoming worldly, cultured, multilingual, me with time to finally write seriously. It started to look less like a sacrifice and more like an adventure. There was one detail, though, one small thing that nagged at me, but I pushed it down. Michael's new firm had a policy about working hours and dedication. It was known in the industry as a demanding place. The kind of firm where 70-hour weeks were normal, where you were expected to prioritize work above almost everything else. When I asked Michael about work-life balance, he assured me it would be fine. Yes, there would be busy periods, but we'd have so much money that we could afford to hire help, take vacations, make it work. After 6 weeks of agonizing deliberation, countless sleepless nights, and what felt like 1,000,000 conversations, I said yes. I agreed to go. We told the kids, and their reactions were mixed. Emma cried and said she hated us. Jake seemed excited, mainly because Michael showed him pictures of swimming pools and beaches. We started the process of selling our house, pulling the kids from school, saying our goodbyes. My mother cried when I told her. Really cried, in a way I hadn't seen since my father's funeral. She didn't say I was making a mistake, but I could see it in her eyes. Michael's mother tried to be supportive, but she looked so small and lost when we told her. I promised we'd visit, that we'd video call all the time, that nothing fundamental would change. I was lying, and I think we both knew it. The move happened fast. Suddenly, we were on a plane, flying away from everything we'd ever known. The kids were silent for most of the 15-hour flight. I held Michael's hand and tried to feel excited instead of terrified. This is an adventure, I kept telling myself. This is going to be amazing. Dubai was stunning. Truly. The architecture was breathtaking, our apartment was gorgeous, the amenities were like something from a luxury hotel. For the first 2 weeks, I tried to convince myself I'd made the right choice. We explored the city, went to the beach, ate at incredible restaurants. It felt like an extended vacation. Then reality set in. Michael started work, and immediately, he was gone. Not just physically, but completely consumed. He'd leave before the kids woke up and come home after they were asleep. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all, just sleep on the couch at the office. The 70-hour weeks he'd mentioned, try 90, try 100. And if this story is resonating with you, if you've ever made a decision you questioned, please subscribe. Your support means everything to this channel. I was alone in a foreign country with 2 children who were struggling to adjust. Emma hated her new school. The international school that was supposed to be so amazing was cliquey and cold. The other kids had all known each other for years, and Emma was the outsider. She came home crying almost every day. Jake seemed to adjust better, but he kept asking when we were going home, when he could see Grandma again. I had no support system, no friends, no family, no one to call when I was drowning. Making friends as an expat was harder than I'd imagined. The other mothers in the building were nice enough, but everyone seemed transient, guarded, not interested in forming deep connections. I was lonely in a way I'd never experienced before. And my writing? The dream I was supposed to finally pursue? I was too exhausted and depressed to write a single word. I'd sit at my laptop and just stare at the blank screen, feeling like a failure. I'd given up my job, my home, my entire life for this opportunity to write, and I couldn't do it. The irony was crushing. 3 months in, Emma stopped eating properly. She'd push her food around her plate and claim she wasn't hungry. I could see her losing weight, becoming more withdrawn. I tried to talk to Michael about it, but he was barely present enough to notice. When I finally got him to sit down for a conversation, he said Emma just needed more time to adjust, that I was being overprotective, that I needed to let her figure it out. I started to resent him, deeply. This had been his dream, his opportunity, and now I was the one dealing with all the fallout while he pursued his career ambitions. We'd moved to give him this chance, and he was barely even a part of our family anymore. When he was home, he was too tired to engage with the kids, too stressed to really talk to me. We became roommates at best, strangers at worst. 4 months in, Michael's mother called. She'd fallen and broken her hip. She was in the hospital, facing surgery and a long recovery. She needed help. Michael's sister lived 3 hours away and had her own family. She could visit on weekends, but Mom needed someone there, especially in those first crucial weeks after surgery. I wanted to go. I needed to go. But Michael said he couldn't take time off work. It was impossible. He was in the middle of a critical project phase, so I'd have to go alone, take the kids, fly back to Portland for who knows how long. But Emma had already missed so much school. And the cost of the tickets at short notice was astronomical. We had the money, technically, but Michael kept talking about how we needed to be smart, that his mother would be fine with his sister's help on weekends. I felt trapped in this beautiful, sterile apartment in a city that didn't feel like home. Trapped in a marriage where I'd become invisible. Trapped in a decision I'd made that I was starting to realize was the biggest mistake of my life. That one small detail I'd ignored, that nagging worry about work-life balance, had turned out to be the thing that destroyed everything. The detail wasn't small at all. It was everything. Because what's the point of financial security if you're miserable? What's the point of opportunity if it costs you your family's happiness? What's the point of an adventure if you're too lonely and overwhelmed to enjoy it? Make sure you're subscribed because this story isn't over, and what happens next will shock you even more than everything I've already shared. 2 weeks ago, something broke inside me. Michael came home at midnight on a Friday, exhausted as always. I was still awake, which had become my new normal. Insomnia had become my constant companion. I told him we needed to talk, really talk. He sighed, that exhausted, frustrated sigh I'd come to hate, and said it would have to wait until the weekend. But Saturday came, and he went to the office. Sunday came, and he slept most of the day, recovering from the week. I realized we were never going to talk because he was never truly present anymore. This wasn't temporary. This was our life now. This was the reality of the choice we'd made, the choice I'd made. I started looking at flights back to Portland, not for a visit, to stay, to take the kids and go home. I didn't tell Michael. I just researched, planned, calculated. I looked at apartments I could afford on a teacher's salary. I reached out to my old school district about job openings. I started in secret planning my escape from this golden cage. Then last week, Michael came home early, actually early, like 6 p.m. I was so shocked I actually asked if he was feeling okay. He said he needed to tell me something. And my heart sank because I recognized that tone. It was the same tone from 8 months ago, when he told me about Dubai. He sat me down and told me that his firm was so impressed with his work that they were offering him another promotion. More money, more responsibility, and a transfer. To their Singapore office. For at least 3 years, possibly 5. I felt something inside me go completely numb. He was asking me to do this again. To uproot us again, move to another country, start over in another place, while he worked himself to death and I tried to hold our family together alone. And he seemed to think I'd be excited about this. He was talking about how Singapore was even better than Dubai, more expat-friendly, better schools, closer to amazing travel destinations. I finally found my voice. I said no. Just that. No. He looked confused, started to argue, and I cut him off. I told him everything I'd been holding in for months, how miserable the kids were, how Emma was suffering, how Jake cried for his grandmother, how I felt completely abandoned, how this wasn't a marriage anymore, how I never saw him, never talked to him, never felt like he was present even when he was physically in the room. And then I told him the truth. I told him I was planning to take the kids and go back to Portland, with or without him. The fight that followed was explosive. Michael accused me of not being supportive, of not understanding the opportunities he was creating for our family, of being ungrateful. I accused him of caring more about his career than his family, of being an absent father, of making decisions that affected all of us without truly considering what we needed. He said if I took the kids back to Portland, he'd stay here. His career was too important to throw away. I said that statement right there was exactly the problem. His career was more important than us. He denied it, but his actions spoke louder than his words. We've been in this awful limbo for a week now, barely speaking, sleeping in separate rooms, both miserable, but neither willing to bend. The kids can feel the tension. Emma asked me yesterday if we were getting divorced. I didn't know what to say. I told her Dad and I were working through some things. But here's the part I haven't told anyone, the part that keeps me awake at night, the thing I'm most ashamed of. There's someone else. Not in the way you might think. There's no affair, no cheating, nothing physical. But there's someone who's been making me feel seen again, understood, valued. Someone who's been slowly becoming more important to me than I ever intended. His name is Daniel. He's another expat, American, from Boston originally. We met at a parent gathering at Emma's school. His daughter is in Emma's class, and she was struggling too. We started talking, comparing notes on the challenges of adjusting to Dubai. Then we started meeting for coffee while the kids were at school. Just talking, sharing our experiences, venting about our frustrations. Daniel's marriage is also struggling. His wife went back to Boston 3 months ago with their younger son, who has special needs and wasn't getting the support he needed here. Daniel stayed because of work commitments, seeing his wife and son only once a month. He understands the loneliness, the isolation, the feeling of being trapped. Our coffee meetings became the highlight of my week. Then my week. Then the only thing keeping me sane. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. He made me laugh again. He listened, really listened, in a way Michael hadn't in months. He saw me as a person, not just as a mother or a wife or a support system for someone else's dreams. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear how this story ends, because I promise you, it gets even more complicated. Last week, after that explosive fight with Michael, I called Daniel. I was crying, overwhelmed, desperate to talk to someone who would understand. He came over. We sat on my balcony, drinking wine, talking until 3 a.m, and at some point something shifted. The air between us became charged. We both felt it. There was a moment where he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both knew that if either of us made a move, everything would change. I didn't make that move. Neither did he. But I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. And the fact that I wanted to, that I was tempted, that I'm emotionally depending on this man who isn't my husband, feels like a betrayal almost as bad as a physical affair. Now I'm standing at this impossible crossroads. Do I stay in Dubai and try to save my marriage to a man who seems to care more about his career than his family? Do I go to Singapore and hope it will somehow be different this time? Do I take the kids back to Portland and potentially end my marriage? And what do I do about these feelings for Daniel? These feelings that make me question everything about my life and my choices. The detail that ruined everything wasn't just Michael's work schedule. It was the fact that in saying yes to Dubai, I said no to myself. I prioritized his dreams over my needs, his ambitions over my happiness, and now I'm paying the price. But I also know that if I'd said no, if we'd stayed in Portland, he'd resent me. He'd always wonder what could have been. He'd look at me and see the person who held him back. Maybe there was never a right answer. Maybe some decisions are designed to break you no matter which path you choose. Michael hasn't mentioned the Singapore offer again. I think he's afraid of my answer, or maybe he already knows what it will be. We're existing in this strange, suspended state, both afraid to force the conversation that will determine our future. Emma came to me yesterday and told me she wants to go home. She said she feels invisible here, like no one sees her or cares about her except me. She said she misses Grandma, misses her old friends, misses feeling like she belongs somewhere. She asked me if we could please go back, even if it's just her and me and Jake, even if Dad stays here. My 9-year-old daughter is asking me to choose between her father and her happiness. How is that fair? How did we get to this place? And if you're still with me, if this story is hitting close to home, please subscribe and let me know in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this impossible situation. Last night, I had a dream. I was standing at an airport, holding the kids' hands. On one side was a gate to Portland, and I could see my mother waiting on the other side, arms open. On the other side was a gate to Singapore, and Michael was there, looking exhausted but hopeful. And straight ahead was a third gate, but I couldn't see where it led. Just bright light and the sound of Daniel's laugh. I woke up before I chose a gate. That's where I am right now, standing at my own impossible crossroads, knowing that whatever I choose will hurt someone I love. If I go back to Portland, I hurt Michael and potentially destroy our marriage. If I go to Singapore, I hurt my children and destroy my own sense of self. If I do anything about these feelings for Daniel, I hurt everyone and destroy any moral high ground I have. There's no good answer. There's no clean solution. There's just a series of painful choices and the knowledge that I put myself here. I ignored that detail, that small warning sign about work-life balance, because I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to be the good wife. And now I'm trapped in a life that was supposed to be an adventure, but feels more like a prison. Michael's mother is out of the hospital now, recovering at home with Michael's sister visiting when she can. She hasn't asked when we're coming to visit. I think she knows the answer would break her heart. My mother calls every week, and I can hear the worry in her voice even when she tries to sound upbeat. She knows I'm not okay, but I can't tell her how bad it really is. I can't admit that I might be falling for someone else, that my marriage might be over, that I'm considering breaking apart our family. Sometimes I think about that moment 8 months ago, standing in our bedroom in Portland, listening to Michael tell me about Dubai. I wish I could go back and tell myself to trust that nagging feeling, to say no firmly and stick with it, to insist that we find a way to make it work in Portland, even if it meant less money, fewer opportunities for him. Because what we have now, this beautiful apartment and fat bank account and complete misery, isn't worth what we lost. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe there's still a way to fix this, to salvage something from this disaster. Or maybe it's already too far gone, and I'm just refusing to see it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I honestly don't. Part of me wants to be brave enough to leave, to take the kids and go home, to start over and build a life that's actually ours. Part of me wants to try one more time to reach Michael, to make him understand what he's losing, to see if there's any way to save this marriage. And part of me is just tired. So tired of fighting, of being strong, of holding it all together. Daniel texted me this morning. Just checking in, seeing how I'm doing. I haven't responded. Because I know if I see him again, if I let myself lean on him again, I'll cross a line I can't uncross. And I'm not ready to make that choice yet. I might never be ready. So I'm here, in this beautiful, sterile apartment, watching my children struggle, feeling my marriage crumble, fighting these feelings for someone else, and wondering how one decision, one yes, could unravel an entire life. And here's what I need from you, because I genuinely don't know what to do anymore. What would you do in my place? Would you stay and fight for a marriage that might already be dead? Would you go back home and potentially become a single mother? Would you give Singapore a chance and hope that somehow this time will be different? Or is there another option I'm not seeing? Some way through this that doesn't involve someone getting hurt? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your stories. Have you ever made a decision you regretted? Have you ever felt trapped by a choice that was supposed to make life better? Have you ever had feelings for someone else while married? How did you handle it? And please, subscribe to this channel, because this story isn't over. I have to make a decision soon. Michael's firm needs an answer about Singapore within 2 weeks. Emma's struggles at school are getting worse. My feelings for Daniel are getting stronger. Something has to give. I'll update you when I know what I'm going to do. But right now, in this moment, I'm just a woman who thought she had everything figured out, until one detail, one ignored warning sign, destroyed her entire world. What would you do? Tell me, because I honestly don't know anymore.